everyone, welcome back to Gardening from Square One, and if you're new here, welcome. Today I will be walking through my garden, identifying winter damage and completing tasks like cutting back and fertilizing plants to get my garden ready for spring. Please stay tuned. So Tuesday we awakened to a dusting of snow on the ground. The low was 13 degrees, and in fact 3 days last week we did not achieve temperatures above freezing, so plants that had been tricked into growing the week prior, for many of those plants, all of that little growth just froze to the ground. However, it is now Sunday, and the 10-day forecast leading into this week has highs in the mid 60s and 70s, lows in the 40s and 50s, with no freezes in sight. So spring is officially knocking on our doors here in Central Texas. And that means it's time for me to roll up my sleeves to complete essential tasks that will breathe a new life into the garden. So join me on a stroll through my garden as I assess the winter dieback and cut back herbaceous perennials. I will also talk about the plants that I still want to wait to cut back, and I will go over what I feed plants with to set the stage for a thriving gardening season ahead. So these are Unpluxo Blue Salvia, and you can see that they've started to push new growth from the roots of the plants, and all of this top growth above that new growth, I'm going to come in with the pruning shears and just snip all of that off. That is all that needs to be done to the salvia over here. I'm really impressed that the new growth that they pushed out the week before last didn't get killed by the low temperatures that we had last week. So this one is ready to be cut back. So this is my west bed. It's a formal bed. It pretty much has roses, shrubs for privacy, crepe myrtle trees, and boxwoods out front. I've already pruned my roses in this bed, so they are good to go, except for the feeding that I need to provide, and I'll go over that in a few minutes. But next I have Sage Advised Russian Sage. Now I am going to cut these back by half. I feel comfortable doing that at this point. I'm going to wait for them to start pushing out new growth, and then I'll see at that point if there's anything else left to do. Russian sage are very carefree plants. They don't get fat. You just stick them in the ground, and they don't even require a lot of water. So not a whole lot to do with these plants. So this is a lavender lightsaber Veronica. I had 5 here. I'm going to replace the 3. Those are the missing plants that you see. I did not plant them properly and planting them in haste, and they did not do well this past season. But the other 2, as you can see, they are semi-evergreen. So the freeze that we had here didn't really affect these plants much at all. I grow them in multiple areas of the garden. So all I'm going to have to do is the dead growth that you see popping up. I need to cut that back, and these plants will be good to go in terms of pruning or cutting back. Now I will feed them with a balanced fertilizer, and that's about it. That's about all they need. So my Blue Fortune Agastaki, you can see that they pushed out new growth too prior to our freeze, but it didn't get knocked back. So these plants are ready to have all that scraggly growth on top cut back so they can grow with all of this new foliage and then ultimately blooms. This is one of my mini Mystic Spire salvia in the yard. Now some of my salvia had started to push out new growth when it became warmer the week before last. Certain areas, all of that got decimated last week with the heart freeze that we received. So I'm going to leave these alone until they start to push out new growth. When they do, at that point, they'll get the same treatment as the Agastaki and the Unpluxo Blue. Going to let the new growth from the roots emerge, and then all the top growth will get cut off at that point. So this is a Miss Violet Buddleia, and it looks pretty horrible right now. I'm actually concerned about it. Butterfly bushes, you don't do anything with them anyway. Once they start leafing out in the spring, you just cut out any dead growth, and you just move right along. It is planted high, so it's planted properly. It was planted a little late in the season, but I'm in zone 8. This is a zone 5 or 6 plant, so I don't know. It had enough time to get established, so about 6 weeks. before we had our first hard frost the first week in January of 2025. So I'm just waiting to see what happens, because I can tell you it did not perform like the Puxter Blue in this bed. And here are the Puxter Blue. They pretty much didn't miss a beat. I mean, they're a little sad after the freeze that we had last week, but I expect them to fully recover. That's what it took, actually, in order for these plants to stop growing. It took our temperatures dipping down into the teens and not achieving temperatures above freezing for about 3 days. That's what it took to make them look a little sad. I would suspect in a zone 9 that this plant is totally evergreen. But again, it's another butterfly bush, so I'm just going to wait until it starts growing. If anything looks ratty or dead, I will cut that out once this plant really starts to actively grow after the temperatures are consistently warm. So this is the El Nino Chaitalpa. I grow 3 of these. This one is new. I received it in December and I planted it. It was a 3-gallon plant. El Nino Chaitalpa doesn't require much. If there's something dead, I'll cut it out, but beyond that, there's not a whole lot to do. It's a pretty carefree plant. I can't wait to sniff the beautiful orchid-like lavender pink blooms that this will have. It reminds me of melon, like a fresh melon and vanilla, if you can imagine that. So really looking forward to this one as it starts to bloom. So this is the east bed, and there's a lot of cleanup on the east bed aisle. These are the last roses that I've been pruning. I have 3 left to prune over here. And then a lot of what you're seeing is the rock and play and the blue salvia. It too has started to push new growth. The week before last, that just got pummeled with the temperatures we had last week. So again, I'm going to wait for it to push out new growth, and once it has done that, I will go in and pop in with my shears and cut everything back. Same treatment with denim and lace Russian sage as the other side, the sage advice that I referred to. I'm going to cut it back some by about half, wait for it to leaf out, and once it does that, I'll be able to tell if there's anything else that I need to cut back with those plants. So now I'm going to move over to the mott of tree space, and I know that some of the boxwoods, they're too inconsistent. I will need to trim those, but I can wait 2-3 weeks to do that. In the pot is a hydrangea, so I'm just going to need to fertilize that. There's a rose down here that I did a horrible job of cutting back. I think it was one of the last roses, and I was fatigued. So I need to come back and clean this up a bit more. There's a lot of leaves in the space that, you know, sometimes you leave them down, but this year I'm going to have them blown away, because as you can see, there's a lot of wasp eggs on the back of some of these leaves on the ground, and I don't know. I'm going to get rid of them because of all these wasp eggs that are all over the place. I have some Daniela flax lily under the burlap. I'll be removing that today. These are my most tender plants. I have 5 of them in this space, this mott of tree space. They are zone 9. I'm 8B. So I like them so much, I'm willing to try and protect them to keep them in my garden. Unfortunately, I came out probably 12 hours too late to cover them. So I'm really hoping that they survive. I will probably know in the next couple of weeks, because they too, the week before last, had started to push out new growth. So once I uncover this burlap, I'll kind of get a better idea as to how did they fare? Will they survive? I will replace them. That's how much I like them, and do better next year, I suppose. So continuing to walk through the mott of tree space, I am going down to my feather false carex on the left. This sedge, so grassy like perennial, it does flower, but we don't grow it for the flowers. We grow it for the beautiful foliage. This plant has been completely unfaced by the hard freezes. It is a zone 5 plant here in zone 8B, and it just looks gorgeous. I grow it in, my plants are all growing in part shade to shade, and this one right here is in filtered sun to shade. And like I said, it was unfazed by the temperatures that we just had, and it just stayed evergreen. So I am exceedingly pleased with this feather false carex. And the last thing that I'm going to need to do is these are more of the Veronica Lavender Lightsaber. And like I said, these plants are evergreen here. So despite the frost, this is what they look like. So all I will need to do is come in and clean up some of the dead remnants, so from last year's growth, and they'll be good to go. I'm going to give it a balanced fertilizer like I indicated, and they will be all set. So the next plant that I want to point out is this yard lime viburnum. It's tiny. It just went into the ground last fall, end of summer, beginning of fall. It was a little quart plant, and it is rated down to zone 7, and it did not take any issue whatsoever with the cold temperatures that we just had. Now, in contrast, I have planted Chindo viburnums in this space, and they are also rated to zone 7, but for some reason they did not make it through the winter. I was concerned about these because plants that are zone 7 or higher, I typically plant in the spring so they could get well rooted in, because the issue here for many of those zone 7 to 9 plants is not the heat, it's the cold. And so the Shindo viburnums zone 7 plants succumbed to the winter last year, but these have made it. So I'm very pleased, and even more so because I have a third one coming, and so happy to know that they can make it through, some of the worst that our winters can throw at it here. Next is the yin viburnum. This is a plant that was discontinued. I heard that it was discontinued because there wasn't a lot of people buying it, but I grow 5 or 7 of these. I have the yin and the yang, and I've been extremely impressed with this plant. So next is my drift of Blue Fortune Agastaki, and these are growing in filtered sun throughout the day. But just like the ones growing in full sun in my long perennial bed, they have pushed up new growth from the base that did not get decimated by last week's temperature. So same treatment. I'm just going to come in and cut out all that spindly growth from last year, give it a little balanced fertilizer, and we're just going to move forward. Last and not least is the plant that I think I am the most excited about. It is this lilac. Now, we aren't supposed to be able to grow lilacs here in the South, or I don't know what this area is called here in Central Texas. United States geographically, you hear different things, but nonetheless, we're not supposed to be able to grow it here. Now, this particular lilac is rated up to zone 9. As I mentioned, I'm in zone 8, and it does have little buds popping out on it right now. So I am going to be very excited to see if it actually blooms and has that beautiful scent that I have never experienced in my garden. We'll see what happens. So this is most of my fertilizing regimen. The tub in the middle is roses March and August. So this has, I have hollytone, I have soil sulfur, I have some iron in here, And that is what I need to give my plants March and August. So soil, sulfur, iron, and hollytone, which skews acidic, which roses skew a little acidic, and I have alkaline soil. To the left is my monthly feeding for roses, which, to be perfectly honest, never happens. If I fertilize once in between March and August, I would be doing good, but essentially that's just hollytone. And then on the right, I have plant tone, and I have iron for my shrubs and trees. And then the bucket that you don't see out here yet because I haven't made it, it's going to be my 5-gallon bucket, but that's going to be a lot of hollytone with iron because most of the junipers and Burford hollies and plants in my yard appreciate me bringing my soil slightly towards the acidic level in terms of pH. So that is the last bucket. Hopefully, I will have all of these tasks and chores completed this week. So that's it. Is it go time for you? If so, let me know the specifics that you do in your garden. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to click subscribe, like, and notifications. I hope you have a great day in your garden. Bye.